Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. In this video, I want to talk about some books I read. So basically, I feel like I've been reading so much lately, but I haven't been filming as many wrap-ups as I should have maybe because suddenly I have so many books I have to wrap up. So I want to break them up in a little bit more digestible chunks, I guess. So for this installment, I'm gonna talk about 4 books. I have 2 young adult fantasies, not something I read so much of lately, but I have 2 here. And then I have 1 horror short story collection and then 1 literary fiction novel. But I'm gonna start with the one I finished first, which is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. So this is a young adult fantasy set in a puritanical society where the prophet, who is the religious figure in this society, rules over everyone, and his word is the law, basically. And this society lives in the middle in the woods, and the woods are called the dark woods, and they are inhabited by vicious witches, I guess, and it is forbidden to enter. And there's this contrast of male and female. The female, which is in the woods and is forbidden and is sinful, and what is out in the light within this society, which is, I guess, the rule of this prophet and religion, and the male figure, because of course the prophet is the man, you know. So there's strong feminist themes in this novel throughout it. Our main character is also called Emmanuel, and she discovers that she has also a dark past and she has dark powers, and she has to kind of figure out what's happening in this society and what is her connection to the dark wood and the witches, and who is this prophet really, and whether this prophet and this society and this view on women and race as well is something she agrees with or something that she has to fight against. So there's a lot of things happening here, but I think what makes this young adult debut stand out a little bit is the comments on gender, this contrast between the male and the female, and how in this society women are always kind of viewed as witches, even though they're part of this society and they're really religious, but there's always a threat that these women can be witches, which is, I guess, a theme of the puritanical times and the witch burnings and the witch trials and so on and so forth, which comes through here pretty strongly. It is a much darker young adult fantasy because of these themes and the woods. There's this menacing atmosphere, and throughout this book, our main character is also pretty much in the dark. She doesn't really know what's happening. She's really unaware of what's lying underneath the surface in this society, and she discovers a whole lot of things. There's also a lot of comments on race in this book, because at the edges of town, people of a different color live in poverty. And actually, Emmanuel's father was from there, so she's also marked as an other. And her family lost a bit of their standing because of her father and her father's involvement with her mother. And of course, she is a child of that union. So I feel like, in a way, there were so many good things happening in this novel, and all these themes of feminism and race are really nice and interesting to see in a young adult book. But on the other hand, the way the plot was handled was a bit lacking with my experience of reading a lot of young adult fantasy books. I just felt like it wasn't gripping me in a way that it should have, and especially because it had these strong themes in it. So what I felt also, that the romance element in this book was also a bit lacking. I really didn't feel that it was necessary to put this in, especially because so many other things and themes are crammed into it. I just felt like it wanted to achieve much more than it could, in a way. Maybe I will give the second one a go just to see how this develops, because we kind of reached a breaking point within the plot line, which is contained to these woods. So I'm hoping that we will go beyond to explore a bit more of this world, I guess. I love this puritanical setting, the witch hunting, witch trials, and the horroristic vibes of this story. I love that the author went really dark with a YA fantasy. But ultimately, there were some things that could have been done much better. And yeah, I don't want to go too much into detail. I think if you love a young adult fantasy, you should definitely give this a go, because a lot of people seem to enjoy it. But for me, it was just okay, I would say. The next one I want to talk about is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. Now, this is a horror short story collection, and I really, really normally stay away from horror. But this is the author's second horror short story collection I read this year. So basically, this short story collection takes place in Argentina. The author draws inspiration from everyday Argentinian life and people and the socio-political situation in her country. And she weaves these stories with supernatural and superstitious elements. And the writing style is just so matter of fact, to the point that you end up rolling with these supernatural elements. You end up taking them as normal everyday occurrences. And I just really loved how unsettled this book and these stories made me feel. And despite the gruesomeness of what was happening, I just could not stop listening. I just needed to know more. I just needed to know what the next short story is going to be and where the author is going to take me next and what she comes up with next. All of these short stories kind of have more or less open endings. And I don't think you really need a closed ending here, because this is more or less social commentary here. And I think that's really the thing that made this book really amazing for me, or these books, because both The Dangers of Smoking in Bed and The Things We Lost in the Fire are really amazing. So I can highly recommend both. What I want to say is that there's recurring themes in both of these short story collections. In this one, there are several short stories which are about mental illness. There are a lot of short stories about girlhood and women, and witches, women as witches, for example, as well. And I especially liked the short story in which we follow a young woman whose job is to take care of a lost children's archive in her city. And suddenly these children reappear, but they are not really what they were before. And even if in the beginning their families are so happy to have them back, after a few days, weeks, these families just turn these kids out because they're saying that these kids are not their children and that there's just something weird about them. The third book I want to talk about is The Shadow Wand by Laurie Forrest, which is book 3 in her Black Witch Chronicles. Now, as you might tell from the title of this series, The Black Witch, this is one I picked up, or this series I picked it up because it is about witches. So similarly to the first book I talked about. And I have to say, as this series progresses, I feel like it's getting worse and worse, because in this book, absolutely nothing happened. Nothing of substance, nothing to move the plot forward. So we start this book by Ellerin is out there training to get to know her powers, whatever. And at the end, she's doing the same thing. So there are some things happening in the middle, but basically she ends up where she started with. And it's like it was a chunkster of a book. Now I had to take it back to the library so I can show you here, but it's just, I was so disappointed. And already I wasn't sure whether I want to continue with this series, because the second book was also a bit disappointing. Now, I think the one main reason why I dislike this series is the love triangle. And I think it's one of the YA tropes which is extremely overused and overdone at this point. And there is absolutely no need to do it. But for some reason, it's just it just keeps being done. So let me know if you feel the same about love triangles. I just don't get it. So basically, in this Black Witch Chronicles, we follow Ellerin Gardner, who is the granddaughter of the great Black Witch who saved her people in the Realm Wars. So we are in this country called Gardneria, and this country is within this world in which there are different races, and all of these races from these neighboring countries are kind of like at war with each other. And there's racial commentary as well throughout these novels about coexisting and about dominating each other and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of people also dislike this book because of that. But as a story, as a fantasy story, it was pretty well done in the first book, because Ellerin has been, she grew up with her uncle and her brothers. And she grew up in this really small town, and her uncle was really a gentleman who really brought her up really with the right mindset, but brought her up really not knowing the truth about herself, her family, and her country, basically. So she goes, at the beginning of the first book, she goes to the university to be an apothecary. She, as a granddaughter of the Grand Witch, the Black Witch, she is expected to have a lot of powers, but she apparently doesn't have any powers, so she only goes to be an apothecary. But in that setting, in that university, she gets to know a lot of foreign students, or a few foreign students who are allowed there, who are from all these neighboring countries. And she, despite having been raised to only think about her own people and her own race, she kind of embraces all these different people and all these races, and she becomes really friends with them. There was a great romance, budding romance in this first one, which I really enjoyed, and the great friendship groups, and overall I could see where it is going, and it really seemed interesting. But I don't know, there was just the second book was okay-ish, but this one, as I say, nothing really happened in here. And I could tell that the author tried to really expand this world, but it was just going on too many different directions. And at the beginning, we kind of followed more different people, but as we progressed, those people and their stories were kind of left behind and left paused, I would say, and then we just focused more and more on Ellerin and more on the things she should have done but didn't do, and things that should have happened but didn't happen. So basically, I feel like it was just a huge filler book. I think I just don't know if I want to continue. And I think I can officially say I don't like love triangles. I think actually I have DNF'd a few YA fantasies because they had love triangles in them. Maybe I should do a video about that. I don't know. But let me know if you have read this series and what you thought about it. I don't think it's so well known, but I think I pretty much agree with the majority on Goodreads who really were disappointed by this third installment. And the last one I wanted to talk about is The Unconsoled by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have picked this up because I'm reading all of Kazuo Ishiguro's backlists, and I think everyone who read his backlist can agree that this is one of his weirdest book, basically. It is so long, and I think the length of it is also by purpose, because this is more like a fever dream where you are lost, you don't know what you want to do, you don't know where you want to go, you don't know who you're surrounded with, or maybe you do, or where you go far away and you come back through a door really fast, where time stretches and compresses, where you have a lot of people around you who you don't know, and then you know, it's just like, and now I'm also going around in circles here. It's like, what is going on? You don't know. Does it matter? Maybe not. Is there a point to it? Good question. I don't know. So tell me, have you read it? What do you think? Because I don't know what to say about it. So basically, this book is just so meandering, and I think that's why it's so long, because it feels like a dream which goes on and on and on, and you feel like you've been sleeping for a day because so many things have happened, and it's only been, oh god, 20 minutes. Just a 20-minute snap, but oh my god, a whole world has happened in that 20 minutes. I don't know. It was weird. It was so weird. And I really like Kazuo Ishiguro's books, his writing style. I think he's amazing. And one thing that made this really weird book so fascinating is that how easy it was to read it. It was just so smooth. You just get sucked in it in some way. The language was just so subtle and rolling that it's like a dream. You just stumble forward. And it was just amazing. The way he played with form. For me, without rambling too much about how I didn't get this book, is why I can admire it is for what it accomplished and how masterfully it accomplished something that sounds impossible to accomplish, I would say. I don't know. So we follow this artist who goes to perform in this town, which is not we don't know which town it is, but it sounds like a German town. And he goes to perform because he's been asked to help this town get out of their cultural funk, I would say, in some way, to get back on the map, because they had a certain cultural standard in the past which they lost, and now they want it back. And that's why they asked our main protagonist to come and perform to help them reach that standard that they're used to, or they think they had at some point. And our main character goes there, and he just stumbles through this town and these people and these events, and he doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know where he needs to be. He doesn't know what's on his list of events he needs to attend. He just doesn't know anything. He just goes through the motions of every day. And you end up thinking, but oh my god, you should have done this and you should have done that. But now you're doing this and it takes up your whole day. But somehow he still manages to do everything. And he's just trying to help everyone. And at the same time, he completely loses touch with who he is and what he's supposed to do. All these people are foreign to him. He doesn't know. He apparently never been there. But as we move throughout the story and he moves throughout his day, we realize that he actually knows some of these people, and some of these people have been in his life for quite a while. And you know, it's just so weird. I've been reading the Goodreads reviews just to see what other people think about it, and I think you either love it or you either hate it. I don't know where I lie, but I can really appreciate it for what Kazuo Ishiguro did here, because it was a hard one to write, and write as well as he did. I don't think I will ever reread this, and I don't think I will ever understand this, but I can appreciate it for what it did. That's all I can say about it. So yeah, such a weird experience. It also took me quite a while to get through it, despite how easy it was to read, because I was like, I'm used to reading things that make sense, and it almost feels like a puzzle, which you know that somehow was put together wrongly, but you cannot for the life of you get to put the pieces so they match together. They're somehow matching, but not completely. They're just something which are always a bit askew, a bit off. And after this, I actually read An Artist of the Floating World, which was one of his last backlisted novels, which I needed to read. And I have read that, so I will talk about it in my next installment of this wrap-up. And then I think I'll get to his newest release, Clara and the Sun, pretty soon. I have it staring at me right there. So I'm really excited to get to that, because I was really avoiding the spoilers. I don't even want to know what the premise is. So whenever I watched a video where someone talked about it, I just click to the next section pretty fast, because I just really want to go in without knowing anything. So let me know if you have read more of Kazuo Ishiguro's books, what was your favorite. So I guess this is where I will leave you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.